"Do not embarrass us tonight," Cordelia said, fastening the last pearl at her own throat while her sister stood holding the tray. "Serve, keep your eyes down, and pray no one remembers you were ever a Marlowe at all." Marian Ashcombe said nothing. She had learned in the 2 years since her father's ruin that silence cost her the least. Once she had worn silk in these very rooms. Now she wore the gray wool of a hired maid, and tonight she would carry wine to the guests who had come to toast her half-sister's engagement to the Duke of Harradine. The great hall of Fenwick House blazed with 100 candles. Alaric, Duke of Harradine, stood at its head with his hands clasped behind his back, and thought that he had never in his life felt so profoundly bored. He had not sought this match. His aunt had arranged it in the way that aunts arrange such things, with talk of suitable blood and adjoining lands, and he had consented because consenting was easier than the long campaign of refusal. Cordelia Fenwick was handsome enough. She laughed at the correct moments. She would, everyone assured him, make an ornament of a duchess. He did not want an ornament. He was not entirely certain what he wanted, only that it was not this room, not this laughter, not the way Cordelia's mother watched him as a fowler watches a bird already limed. Then the wine came, and he saw the maid. She moved along the tables with a stillness that struck him at once as wrong for a servant, not the practiced invisibility of the trained footman, but something older, something that had once belonged to this room by right. She poured without spilling a drop. When a gentleman's elbow knocked her arm and the claret leapt toward his sleeve, she caught the tray level in a single motion and murmured an apology she did not owe, and her chin never dropped. It was the chin that held him. A servant's chin dips. Hers stayed level, as though she had decided long ago that whatever they took from her, they would not take that. "Harradine," Cordelia was at his side, following his gaze, and her smile thinned. "You are looking at the help." "Am I?" "That is only Marian," a small, dismissive laugh. "My father's first wife's girl. She has fallen rather far. We keep her on out of charity when there is extra work." Charity, Alaric thought, that put a woman in service at her own family's table. He said nothing, but he watched the maid reach the far end of the hall, and he saw the exact moment an old woman in violet. A dowager he half knew spoke sharply and gestured for more wine, and Marian returned and poured, and the dowager said something that made the nearer guests titter, and still the chin did not drop. "She was raised a gentlewoman then," he said. "She was raised above herself," Cordelia corrected. "It is a mercy she has learned her place. Do come, the musicians are ready." He came. He let himself be led, and toasted, and admired, and through all of it some part of him remained at the far end of the hall with the gray-clad woman who would not look at him. Supper was long. The Duke ate little and spoke less, and the more Cordelia sparkled the more he felt the wrongness of the evening settle into his chest like a stone. When the sweet course came, it was Marian who set the dish of syllabub before him, and for the first time she was near enough that he might have spoken, and near enough that he saw her hands were chapped at the knuckle in a way that no gentlewoman's hands should be. "Thank you," he said. The whole table seemed to still. A duke did not thank a maid. Marian's eyes came up gray, direct, entirely unafraid, and held his for the length of a heartbeat. "Your Grace," she said, and stepped back into the shadow of the sideboard. Cordelia laughed too loudly to cover it. "You must forgive his Grace," she said to the table. "He is famously kind to animals and servants alike." The laughter came, dutiful and cruel, and Alaric watched Marian's face receive it without flinching. And something in him that had been asleep for a very long time came awake and did not intend to sleep again. He rose before the port. "Forgive me," he said, "I find I want air." The terrace beyond the hall was cold and blue with moonlight, and he had not been there a minute before he heard the door and turned, half hoping. But it was only the dowager in violet, come to escape the heat. "You are wondering about the girl," she said without preamble. She was very old and had the freedom of the very old to say anything. "Marian Marlowe. I knew her mother. A finer creature never drew breath, and she married Edmund Marlowe, who gambled the estate into the ground and died leaving nothing but debts and a daughter. And the second wife, Fenwick's widow, who married Marlowe for his name and buried him for his debts, and who has raised her own girl to shine and her stepdaughter to serve. The dowager's mouth was grim. Cordelia is your betrothed's daughter, your grace. Marian is nobody's. That is the whole of it. It is not the whole of it, Alaric said quietly, or you would not have come out here to tell me. The old woman looked at him a long moment. No, she admitted, it is not. When Marian was 16 and this house still hers, my carriage broke an axle on the Fenwick Road in a January sleet, and it was that child who came out with lanterns and blankets and would not go in until my coachman was warm and my horses were stabled. She has forgotten it, I dare say. I have not. She drew her shawl close. You may do as you like, Duke. But I have sat at a great many tables, and I have learned to tell the ornaments from the treasures. You are about to marry the ornament. She went back in. Alaric stood in the cold a long while. Inside, the evening was curdling toward its end. Marian had been sent down to the kitchens, and then, because Cordelia's mother believed in the fullest possible use of an unpaid hand, sent up again to gather the abandoned glasses from the hall. She was doing this alone when the Duke came back through the terrace door. He stopped. She straightened, a glass in each hand. You needn't leave, he said, for she had begun to. Stay, I would speak with you. That would not be proper, your grace. Very little tonight has been proper. He came a few steps nearer. The dowager tells me you once owned this house. Marian set the glasses down carefully. My father owned it. It is a different thing. Her voice was low and even. I do not tell the story, your grace, because it does no good. People prefer their maids without histories. I am not people. No, a faint, tired curve of her mouth that was not quite a smile. You are a duke, betrothed to my sister, standing in a cold hall talking to the woman who poured your wine. Whatever this is, it will end badly for me and cost you nothing, and I have already paid a great deal, so I will ask you kindly to go in. It was the most anyone had said to him in years without wanting a single thing from him, and she was asking him to leave. He found he could not. Tell me one thing, he said, and I will go. When they laughed at the table, the whole room of them, you did not look away. How? Marian considered him. The candle in the sconce beside her guttered, throwing gold across her plain gray dress. Because looking away is what they want, she said. It is the whole of the game. They take your house, your name, your place at the table, and then they wait for you to lower your eyes, and if you do, they have taken the last thing. I decided I would not give it. It is a small victory. Some nights it is the only one. She lifted the glasses again. Now you know. Good night, your grace. He let her go that time, but he did not sleep. In the morning, Alaric did a thing that would be spoken of in 3 counties for a decade. He asked to see the household accounts of Fenwick House, a courtesy his betrothal entitled him to, and in them he found, precisely as the dowager had implied, that Marian Marlowe was carried on no wage ledger at all. She was fed and housed and worked, and paid nothing, because a woman who is paid nothing cannot leave. He sent for Cordelia's mother. You will explain to me, he said, in the cold, pleasant voice that had ended other men's careers, why the daughter of this house's late master appears in your books as neither family nor servant, but as a thing you own. Cordelia's mother, Lady Fenwick, had faced down creditors and won. She had not faced down a duke who had decided to be angry. She began to explain about charity and Christian duty and the girl's ingratitude, and the more she explained the worse it sounded, and at the end of it Alaric simply said, Where is she? She was in the still room, up to her elbows in the labor of the morning after a feast. She looked up when he filled the doorway, and for the first time he saw something cross her face that was not composure, a flare of pure alarm, because a duke in the servants' passage meant trouble, and trouble in that house always fell on her. You are dismissed, he said. The alarm became something worse. Your grace. Not by me, He stepped inside. "From this house, from their service, I have arranged it. You will not spend another night as an unpaid hand at your own mother's graveside, which is what this house is." He drew a breath. He had rehearsed nothing. He found he did not need to. "Miss Marlowe, I broke my engagement this morning. I told Lady Fenwick I could not marry into a family that keeps a gentlewoman in bondage and calls it charity, and I meant every word, and I would have said it if I had never seen you again in my life. But I have seen you, and I would be a liar and a coward if I let you think that was the only reason." Marian had gone very still. Flour on her hands, a smudge of it on her cheek, her gray eyes fixed on him. "You do not know me," she said. "I know you kept your chin up in a room built to make you drop it. I know you warmed a stranger's horses in the sleet when you were 16 and had no thought of reward. I know you told a duke to go away because you would not let him ruin you for sport when a lesser woman would have played every card she held." He crossed the small room. "I have been surrounded my whole life by people arranging their faces for me. You are the first who arranged nothing. I do not want an ornament, Miss Marlowe. I never did. I did not know what I wanted until a woman in gray wool poured my wine and would not look down." The still room was silent but for the drip of a tap. "They will say you are mad," she said, but her voice had changed. "They say that already," something like a smile. "Let them add a reason. I have no fortune, no name left worth the having, nothing to bring you." "You have every single thing I lack," he said. "Come out of this house, Marian, not as anyone's charity, as my guest and my equal, and if in time you find you can bear the man beneath the title as more, I will wait. I have waited 38 years already. I am in no hurry now that I know what I am waiting for." She looked down at her flower-white hands, and then, slowly, deliberately, she wiped them on her apron and lifted her face, and the chin came up as it always did, but this time not against him. For him. "Then I will come out," Marian said, "and we shall see, your grace, whether the man is worth the title." He laughed, a real laugh, rusty with disuse. "I have wondered that myself for years. Perhaps you are the one to find out." They did not marry that week, nor that month. He was as good as his word. He courted her slowly, properly, as no one had ever thought a fallen woman worth courting, and the sight of the Duke of Harradine walking the Fenwick lanes with the dismissed maid on his arm rearranged the entire county's understanding of what mattered. Cordelia, who had lost a duke, found the door of every drawing-room a degree cooler than before, for society forgives many things but never the exposure of its own cruelty. Lady Fenwick's charity was discussed, at last, in the correct tone. And Marian bloomed. Not into an ornament. She remained exactly the level-eyed woman who had poured his wine. But the weariness went out of her by degrees, and the laughter came in, and one bright morning nearly a year on she stood in a chapel in a gown the color of new cream and married Alaric Harradine with her chin up and her eyes, for once, unashamedly full. At the wedding breakfast the old dowager in violet, older still now, raised her glass and caught the Duke's eye across the table. "The treasure, your grace," she said, so only he could hear, "and not the ornament." Alaric looked at his wife, who was laughing at something a child of the parish had said, her hand resting warm and sure in his, a woman restored not to what she had lost but to something better, to being seen. "The treasure," he agreed. "I nearly walked past her. God forgive me, I nearly walked past her with the wine still on my lips." He lifted Marian's hand and kissed it there before everyone and did not care who watched. "But I did not, and I mean to spend every year I am given being grateful that I did not." Marian turned to him then, and the chin was up, and the eyes were soft, and the last of the gray wool years fell away for good. "Then we are agreed, husband," she said, "for I mean to spend them being glad you looked."